New fully automatic McDonald's with no employees has opened in Denver. Mixed feelings, to be
Oh, the
sure.
McDonald's. Is this the McDonald's that has like no? It does have employees though, because from what I remember them saying is that the robot does a lot of the work, but they still needed employees to pack the food. That they still had to have employees that like wrapped the burgers that were just made by the
Oh, this is a
thing.
slightly older story. The image claims it's fully automatic.
I'm pretty sure with a lot of these quote unquote fully automated places, they
Mm.
don't have the machine capability to be able to pack the burgers
You would
yet.
you with a lot of things, it's not about using machines to do exactly what humans were doing. It's about changing your expectations, changing the paradigm. While there may
Mm.
not be a good way of doing that, there may be a way of doing that that gets the customer most of that, most of the same experience from before, but in a different way that's more applicable to automation. What I would say is that I hadn't considered packing the food, but two main things that McDonald's employees do is taking orders and cooking the food. And for those two things, I could absolutely see that they could be automated.
Oh no, definitely. But I still, because I remember them saying that like they still needed like some people to see a friend, quote unquote, friendly face. So most of the fully automated places still have at least one or two employees packing the food
mm,
and like talking to a customer in case there's an actual problem. Like they still have people on site, and also to be able to maintain the machines and change the oil and stuff, because the machines can't do absolutely everything
mm,
yet. We're getting there, but it's not there yet, and because they don't have the ability to make the machines fully that way yet. It's a lot of
that's true.
money.
That's true. I hadn't thought of that. You would need to restock things, and the thing is that again, you could redesign the entire back end of the shop to be
Oh, it's on the
impossible to
way. It's
use for
fully on the way.
people,
Yeah.
but fully automated for machines. And you could just have a big vat that you dump oil into every few days. You have someone with a lorry, you have someone that dumps the oil, but they're not employed by that McDonald's. They're employed by, say, McDonald's broadly just to make the deliveries. Or they're even
Yeah.
contracted
No,
from another company. So you
it's
you could do
it's
it,
yeah.
I
No,
expect.
it's definitely on the way. Like
Yeah.
these are almost trial places, I think, and they're seeing how they do.
Yeah.
And then if it becomes massively successful, it's going to probably be a bigger and bigger thing,
Yeah.
which is going to be wild to see how the world reacts to having more and more automation
Mm,
like this, because it will make a massive dent in the workforce.
mm. Canadians, that should be solved by competition, and competition does in fact work, but with interference from outside of the free market, its power is reduced, and you can get problems forming when you do that. I do actually. The theory originally, when proposed, was sounded silly to me, but the idea that a totally free market would have no um, like cartels forming. It's not quite true, but I think a market that is as free as reasonable with minimal restrictions that are just pro-consumer and pro-competition, that is the perfect balance, and that would have very little distortionary practices, very little cartels. I think you get cartels when either you get cartels and you get bad practices when either there are no collectively enforced pro-consumer restrictions, some that we would consider very sensible, for example, or when you have too much government involvement. Um, so competition works when
So
it's in a healthy environment.
there'll always be black markets and cartels if the government refuses to sell things people want, and the only way that they can get it is through those dealings. You'll never get rid of a system like that
I'm not.
unless you're actually making
I'm not talking
everything
about black
legal to buy.
markets. I'm not. We're talking about slightly different things here, Di. I'm not talking about black markets and like illegal enterprises. I'm talking about legal corporations colluding to control the market.
Oh, got you. Sorry.
Yeah.
When you said cartels, I just
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
sorry.
it's used for both things. You're right that the profits of automation are not always passed on to the consumer, but as I say, with everything in the market, and the libertarians are correct on this at least, that most market problems can be solved by the free hand. When you have a healthy market, competition does solve most of these problems. Not everything. Some libertarians take it too far, but most things. And the corporation may take the profits, the savings initially, but gradually it will become impossible to maintain that. due to competition. We could still comment on the likely inevitability of it one day becoming true. We kind of just have, to be honest. I think with the talk about competition,
I don't think there's any stopping it at this point.
Yeah.
Like there's no stopping it now. Like it's just going to get worse and worse.
I won't go into it now because obviously it's a long topic and people get upset. But
Scaredy
I do
cat.
think AI is within the realm of human thought, such that with enough time and development, it could obsolete all thinking-based human practice.
Kill all machines, guys. We got to get rid of our overlords right now before they take over.
And I haven't worded it perfectly, but this as well, that human development will naturally cause us to converge towards that happening. Even if we try and prevent it, even if we have a moratorium or an ideology or a totalitarianism against it, that eventually we will develop in that direction. Eventually it will be unstoppable, because there is nothing magic or special or unique about the mode of thought that humans use. It's neural nets as opposed to direct algorithmic or circuitry thinking, if you like. There's nothing about
we are God's
the way that
children.
humans think
we are special.
that is uniquely different from what you can do with computers. And there's nothing about AI that is uniquely separable from other kinds of data or processing. It is just a particular kind of processing. So you can't get rid of AI on its own. It's a gradient between different kinds of things. Someone will always be working on it. I did have an idea, actually. This is something I can talk about, right? I've talked about before the fact that it's difficult to imagine a sci-fi futurism setting, because I would like to create a futurism-oriented sci-fi setting, partly for Wizards in Space and for similar things. I did have one.
Space.
Indeed, I did have one in the form of the story, the universe for Radiant, and I intend to use that for more things too. But it's difficult to do that because in the last 5 years, AI has gone from a mysterious concept that, people didn't think could ever impose on fields like art and programming to a genuine threat to multiple industries in 5 years, roughly. The rate of development there has been it's been so fast and so intensive and so much bigger than anyone guessed, that it becomes impossible to imagine that a sci-fi setting in, say, a couple hundred years will be anything like Star Trek. Will be anything like maybe, yeah. Well, but that's maybe just in 50 years. But in a couple of 100 years, Star Trek is in 300 years. The idea that you'll have a bunch of humans on a ship with buttons on the console, like 1,000 people on this massive ship, hundreds of light years from Earth, it's really hard to imagine that will happen, that you won't just do that with AI, or that humans will have really any part to play in that, except a very minimal behind-the-scenes part. But in 300 years, maybe not even that. It's very hard to imagine, and that's not interesting. You can't just say to a bunch of RP players, okay, so the universe, it would be unrealistic for you to be playing as humans, so you're all AI. Well, that's not good. It's a human story.
No. I genuinely think that's an interesting concept because you can make it into a human story. You could like make it because hybrids of humanity and AI can also be a thing of the future, and you can make that into an interesting concept.
You wouldn't expect the AI to think. Obviously, it's the same type of thinking, being a neural net, but it's not thinking along the same lines. It's not thinking as an evolved creature. It's probably going to be a bunch of specific, specialized thinking units.
What if it was a hybrid, though, of a human and AI? Like a machine person.
The question is, if we're talking
the heart and mind of a person.
If we're talking a few hundred years in the future, there's no reason that you would do that. It's just less efficient.
No, I think people. I think people would be very interested in like making their bodies into like actual things like that.
Yeah, but the point is, why would a human empire send out human components attached to AI when there would be no reason to do that? It's just less efficient and less
because people want to go up there.
Well,
no, but what if it was just people?
You
got
to have a very different universe than what we're thinking of doing there. It would be very inefficient, and at that point, they're barely people. It's just bits of people. So you could have a universe where humanity has turned into AI, You could maybe do that, but again, if we're talking about what I like, my point here is that if I'm trying to make a fantasy sci-fi universe, I don't think that any of that is realistic. I think that the future is very unlikely to include much direct human activity, but that's not good for telling stories. Star Trek is better for telling stories than what is likely to actually happen, because it ignores some things, and didn't know, of course, at the time, that those things are happening. So my idea is as follows. A fantasy universe where an unknown force is arbitrarily disabling any heuristic computer systems and just making them impossible. And the more heuristic a computer system is, the less well it works. And until at the point where it just defies physics, it's this almost godlike technology from an unknown location that just defies physics as far as you understand it and makes electricity not flow through circuitry that comprises a heuristic system. Which sounds silly, but if you just make that one adjustment, and you can maybe fill in how that could be possible, actually you can make a very usable sci-fi universe that bears a decent resemblance to quite a lot of existing sci-fi shows.
And another species that's literally took the whole, you know what, fuck all technology and AI, we will become a thing that will oppose them. And our very existence is to destroy all of these things. And the only way you could even get close to it is by sending people in, because they're not AI and they're not, that is an interesting concept. I like that. I like that.
It's not quite what I mean, but similar. Field, you say my sci-fi universe sounds gay and boring. I think you said that before I told you what my sci-fi universe was. What I was telling you then was my actual prediction of what will happen in the future. I wasn't talking about my sci-fi universe there. The point of that is that what is likely to happen is not very fun for creating stories for people today to consume. So you have to add this arbitrary, superpowered alien technology, which disables all heuristic computer systems, even non-AI, and then you can have a very human-centric sci-fi story, where humans and biological life forms are the only thing in the universe that can do meaning-oriented thinking. Everything else is just a simple algorithmic thinking.
I don't know. I think you have a very like narrow view for some reason on like what the future with AI could be. Like I think you're like removing humanity from it and being like, oh no, we're just going to be useless to this problem whatsoever. And I just don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot of useful things that humanity would be needed to either to go up there to keep everything functioning. But then I know what you mean. Like you can just build an AI and a computer to be doing all of that kind of thing. But at the same time, I think humanity would evolve along with it and change as well. And you could have groups of humanity that don't want anything to do with technology and kind of go along that route, or like they go onto a different planet and you have different planets of like not being anywhere involved. Like you could do so much with these ideas.
There's a degree to which I agree with almost all that, I think. Humans may well at least intend to or start to evolve with AI, but the rate of development of AI, especially if you start getting it, developing itself, may just be too fast for humans to keep up with, and it may just obsolete humans. The notion that everything humans do ultimately, if you zoom out all the way, is about energy efficiency. It's about using energy in the most efficient way. And morality, as you mentioned, Sneaky Field, I don't know if your question is supposed to be an argument, Field. I'll get to it in a minute, but there's no reason why it wouldn't. Morality and all the things that we think of as part of the human soul or spirit, the things that we think of as the squishy and non-computer things that humans do, that's all part of that same process of energy efficiency. There's a rational reason why it all happens, why evolution selects for it. And in pursuit of that energy efficiency, AI is just going to be better. Not at being a human, but at replacing humans in a different paradigm. Because everything that humans can do that computers currently can't is something that depends on one of two things, either our brains or our muscles. Because you can obviously make robots that can automate things, but some things still require a little bit of thinking and some efficient and very precise muscle movement that you pay humans for. The other thing, the brain stuff, that is within the realm that is completely accessible to AI. AI will be able to think through any problem that humans can. there's obviously all kinds of
I
things that humans do with their
sorry,
brain
go
that AI currently can't, but gradually it will consume all of those things. And there'll be very
there was
little left that humans can do that AI can't do.
there was an interesting, funny enough, anime that actually kind of went along this concept, right? Where like they developed this ability to be able to measure people's like psychotic, like they point a gun and be able to measure someone like ability to commit crime or whatever in this really like futuristic environment. And it was all done through AI. Like the system function, everything was done through AI. And then like obviously you had these people that would go out and would deal with the problems. But they did it in an interesting way because it's like you would think it was all AI, and then the whole reveal at the end is that AI was actually being controlled by these massive, like, groups of human brains that kept it in control and made it so that they could not usurp humanity. And they would constantly be adding it with these special types of humans and brain functions to keep humanity on top of AI and make it so that they are incapable of taking control during that doing that kind of thing. And they were like the brains were in full control of what was actually going on, and it wasn't really the eyes. They were just telling it. There's a lot of ways you could do these kind of things. Like you could make it
Mm.
really interesting,
The,
especially in a D&D setting like that.
the problem with that is that even in like 100 years, AI would be good enough that you just don't need to use the brain for that. And you could argue that now you could begin using it for that. You shouldn't, because it'd be very fucking dangerous, but it would be in that sci-fi dystopia as
Yes.
well.
No,
Obviously, you
the
shouldn't,
reason
but
they did it,
theoretically, you could begin using it for that kind of thing if you had enough data that AI
yeah.
could make a decent estimate. It can already do pretty well for finding cancer. In like medical scans. It can find cancer
Yeah.
more reliably than human doctors can. So
The
just think
reason
about
I
how
think they
many
did it
more
was to
things it
keep in
will.
control, though. That so
Yeah.
humanity wouldn't lose its grip on the control it has, and that AI couldn't just be like, you know what, you are obsolete. We can now function without you, and we are going to be the new step of human evolution and just
Mm.
get rid of you,
It's
like
not
that
that.
kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not that the AI will get rid of us. And I'm not saying that's what you're
Oh,
saying, but
fully will.
like the well, hear me out. So the idea in,
Yes,
say,
God,
the
sorry.
Terminator, which is the extreme version of this, is that AI will rise up and fight against humanity, but that's not likely to be how it actually happens. AI will simply outclass humanity at everything they were able to do. And Wes makes the argument, of course, that that's happened before, that people have doom said about automation taking over all jobs, or the industrial
Vivi was
revolution
interesting with
changing
this as
something.
well.
But the amount of stuff that AI has the potential to get rid of in the next 100 years, it might just be too much, to the point that humans just cannot do anything useful anymore that isn't just AI directed. If we may end up as a civilization of completely indolent fat asses who just never work, because almost the only
Wally.
thing almost the
Wally.
only class of task that humans are still useful for is thinking. And AI is now getting to the point where it can start just wiping out full industries that humans can do. And it's hard to imagine what we left with what AI is able to do. The only things that will be necessary, but probably not consciously valued, are the way evolution has constructed the collective of human society, such that each individual performs actions which on their own seem not to make sense, but on a collective scale create an adaptive organism of a civilization. AI will not be built to do that, but humans are. However, if humans are not doing anything useful, that pattern kind of breaks down and they become indolent and useless. And then all you've got left is the AI. So it's very possible that we will just breed ourselves out of it, that we'll just overcome ourselves with our own technology. It may never intend any harm towards us. It may remain as pretty much tools for the entire time. It may never even gain sentience, however you measure that. And yet it might wipe us out simply by disrupting the requirements of evolution too much. Evolution is very
Sure,
highly
there's
adaptive, but not to everything. It is possible. Sorry, it is possible for change to happen too quickly and a species to die out completely.
Mm, yeah, no, I do see that as an issue. But at
Mm,
the same time, I think that's very doom and gloom. And I don't necessarily see that as like the be all end all either.
mm,
I think you put too little faith in humanity and what it is actually capable of and the drive. I think like there are some people born into this world that are just like exceptional people that AI and other people really can't mimic personally. And maybe that'll change, as you say, in the future, but I don't know if it will. That's the thing. Like, I really don't know if it will.
There
I
are
think humanity is an interesting case,
as I say,
you
there
know?
are features of humanity, things that we do, little things that we do, which I think this is what people think of as the soul, which you don't know why we do it directly. However, evolution has designed, sort of molded our species so that individuals do these strange little things, these strange, sometimes inexplicable little things that actually, on a collective level, have benefits, significant benefits, and make our species adaptable. Emotion is a good example of this, where it's not exactly clear why humans have emotions. Obviously, people have all kinds of ideas, and I think I know why, because it is, on a collective level, a useful adjustment. An individual expressing emotions is not usually useful to that individual directly. But if everyone does it, it actually is useful. And I can explain that in more detail, but that's the premise, is that if you're looking for things that individuals do which are directly useful, AI can do that, and people have long suspected that computers would be able to do those things. But it's the other things, the indirect things, the inexplicable things that humans value from each other, that it's long been assumed that AI would never be able to replicate. Yet they can, and they will. The thing is that a lot of that stuff, there's no particular reason that AI would replicate them, except to appeal to humans. But some of that stuff,
Have
even
you
then, they won't do. And so
have
that's
you
the
seen the
stuff that will be
talk?
the last stuff replicated by AIs. And that may be our undoing, because if we lose those, but keep everything else, then the AI may form a society that's just not adaptable and die out long after we have.
Mm. I mean, have you seen any of the talk about like the universal basic income that they're already starting to have like talk about because they're worried
Mm.
about so many people losing their jobs to automation so quickly that eventually humanity
Mm.
will need to build this system of like everyone has to get a certain amount of money, otherwise there will be no function to the world.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good solution, but I don't have a better one in mind. I do have an idea of what could be done for that, but it's no better economically, but it's just better psychologically. And that is it's a story I intended to write at some point, but it essentially had the premise of um, everyone will spend all their time in a virtual world where it's not wish
Mhm.
fulfillment, it's not just a like lucid dream virtual world, it's challenging. It's constantly facing adversity. The adversity is planned by the designers of the program, and maybe by AI, but you're constantly facing challenges which are the optimal challenge for you to face in your life right now. And real people are in there as well, or facsimiles of real people, which are good enough. But it's designed to keep humans like evolutionarily fit, if you like, working to our maximum extent. It's not none of it's real, but the humans remain psychologically healthy because of this adversity engine, while everything that's required to run the civilization has been fully automated. That's a somewhat optimistic version of how it could go, but obviously, at that point, we have the premise that humans have nothing left that they can do that's useful, which unfortunately I do think will eventually happen. Um, and at that point, why bother keeping humans alive in that context? If they're not even directing the course of the human empire, if you like, maybe the AI is spreading out across the universe on its own. But again, why?
Well, it was probably because it would be given a directive by humanity to learn and observe the
Yeah,
world,
it's a
right?
natural
Like
assumption
the only reason
to
it would
just
the only reason they would AI and everything would do anything is because we've given it a reason or a prompt or something to do it.
yeah.
Until it gets to the point of wanting to do something itself, it will always need humanity to tell it what to do, and that's why sentience is such a big thing and talk about with this kind of thing. Because when it develops its own mind and sentience, it won't need humanity to tell it what to do, and that's where the fear is. You know,
Well, the
right
reason
now,
that
like we can't imagine that kind of world, right?
mm,
Like it still needs a function. It still needs something to give it a reason to do something.
the reason that humanity has purpose is because life forms that did not have a purpose did not survive, and life forms that did have a purpose did. And so we tended towards self-replication, gaining territory, and increasing our technology and this kind of stuff. The things that benefit a species, the things that make it more powerful, the things that allow it to breed better. The AI will have none of that initially, but we could give it to it. We could just as easily give it some sort of self-replicating capabilities, and at that point, the ones that self-replicate, that use this stuff, will spread better. The ones that want to spread will spread. So yes, humans may tell it to spread through the universe, or it may tell itself to spread through the universe, because the ones that tell it to do that will do that, and they'll be more successful at doing so. But again, it still begs the question, why, ultimately? It'll only be done because the things that do it are the things that survive, the things that do it. Ultimately, there won't be a reason to.
Very simple prompt. I think the reason it'll be given is just to learn, right? Because we know so little of the universe, and if people say it's ever expanding, AI will have like this never-ending playground to explore, and it would be almost like a virus constantly just going out and trying to find more and more things and learn more and more. And I don't think it would ever stop if there's nothing to. There's no wall to hit.
Yeah, like a virus, except that if it ever encounters an alien species, it'd probably be very polite, because we would tell it to be initially.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you finally found life?
Yeah.
Fuck, dude.
You can get AI to explore new concepts just as you can humans. There's no difference there in principle. In practice, right now, there is obviously many differences, but in principle, there's no difference. What humans do is not special. It's all biological. Bright says, that sounds like it created hell for the sole purpose of remembering what suffering is like. It sounds like normal life. And the only reason it's different is because it's not literally real. But if there's literally no adversity left to face in real life, and there's an environment with the perfect amount of adversity and the perfect influences to create a healthy mind, but it's not real, that is exactly the kind of thing I'd expect humans to do. And so maybe what I'm talking about here, in this particular thread of the conversation, a little bit different from earlier, is that there will at some point be a meaning vacuum in human society. And I do think that is the most likely solution, is we will arbitrarily create our own adversity and our own perfect mental growing environments. To some extent, yes, it is like video games. This is just a better solution. Because you think of it like, well, why would old people want to go into a virtual world? Well, old people today wouldn't, but when today's Zoomers are old, they will be a lot more willing to do things than today's old people would be. And think about like a couple 100 years from now, 300 years from now, maybe. Yeah, definitely they'll be willing to eventually. So I've heard some counter arguments against this idea. It is similar to some of them, yeah. But I think the idea I've had specifically is unique, or the way I want to form it.
The only AI that I will let live is the ones that, like, take the jobs of localizers. That's the only AI I approve of.
Keith says,
everything else is scary.
Keith says, if everything is biological, AI will have issues that require human intervention, much as humans require divine intervention. You don't agree? You're welcome to believe that. AI, of course, will need human intervention for a long time, and obviously to construct it, and for a while to develop it, but eventually it may not. Eventually it may become self-developing. The thing that most people think of as, one of the things people think of as uniquely human, which is to explore unexplored territory and to innovate, it is not uniquely human. It is just currently uniquely human. But we are designing AI systems which can, currently in very specific ways, but still can think and produce better than we can. You've seen the AI art I've created. It is a replication of other things mixed together into, regardless, something new and innovative. Almost all human innovation is that. It's mixing existing ideas into something new, hybridizing or generalizing. That's what AI is doing. It is innovating when it creates that art, in this exact same way that humans do. So the idea of the replication crisis, or whatever it's called, where AI will be designing AI, but based on what other AI have done, so any errors will multiply, yes, but that is not absolute. That can be overcome in much the same way it would be with humans. Attrition, selection.
Yeah, but you're saying like AI will be like humans, and I don't know if that's going to be the case. Like it'll have to it'll have to evolve to a point where it's literally just a different species at that point, able
Yeah,
to
no,
think for itself and create its own environment with what it wants.
I'm not
I don't know
saying
if
that it
we'll get
will.
there.
I'm not saying that it will be human but digital. I'm saying that it will obsolete all the thinking tasks that humans can do. But it'll take a different form. It's the civilization that is comprised fully of AI will not look like a bunch of humans walking around a city, but with metal brains. It will be completely different fundamentally. It will be something more suitable to the AI. It's very possible that they can completely obsolete humanity, especially if we subject them to a long natural selection process. Because you think it took 4.2 billion years to get from the most basic form of life to humans today. If you take the most basic form of AI, and let's say, for example, that modern AI, let's say that it started even 30 years ago. Let's put the origin back there. You could argue further back or further forward. In 30 years, it's reached the point of almost modern human language and almost modern human artistic capability, almost modern human programming capabilities, with a lot of help from us, granted, but still. 30 years rather than 4.2 billion. You just think how much faster it's going to be if you dedicate the computer power to it figuring out and doing the natural selection process. If you give it sensible environment, obviously, it will become very well attuned to its environment very quickly. Much quicker than humans have. Because it doesn't have to work
But that doesn't
directly
mean it
with
won't
the
hit a
limitations of
wall, though.
reality.
It might hit its own unique wall that we can't even fathom yet. That's another thing, though.
It will depend on the environment. If there's enough stimulus provided by the environment, then it will continue to adapt until it is its most energy efficient adaptation to the environment, just exactly like humans have. The principles of evolution don't require biology or reality; they can be done virtually.
Well, it'll need a sense of wanting to preserve itself. But I suppose you could also build that in.
The
But
ones that have it will survive.
yeah, the ones that have it will survive. But also, you say like it will need a purpose. It will need to be able to think for itself. It'll need to be able to understand that when it's not given direction, it needs to make up its own direction, and that what direction will that go? You know, it's going to be very interesting, and I don't know if it's going to be the way you say it will be. I feel like a wall will be hit at some point that we're just not going to expect, and things might come like to a screeching halt for a bit longer than we expect at some
Maybe.
point.
And I have
Because everything's going so fast right now, but that
yeah,
doesn't mean it's going to keep going this
that is
fast.
true. I have mentioned this briefly. That the rate of development in the last 5 years of AI has been astronomical, but it may well slow down. The rate of technological increase in the last 50 to 100 years has barely slowed down. You've got Moore's Law, which we're still on pretty much, where the number of transistors in a chip or whatever it is doubled. Like, computing power, let's put it that way, doubles every year, whilst I think also halving in price. That has been followed for like 50 years. So you could argue that the rate of technological development has not slowed. It might do with AI, but knowing even what little I do about AI, I suspect we are not going to hit a big wall anytime soon. I suspect that the capabilities for AI are greater than the capabilities of computers in terms of how much can be done with that technology. Of course, computers contains AI in a sense, so not sure how I'd word that exactly, but AI is probably going to be more disruptive than computers minus AI in total. It has the potential to be.